there, listeners. Are you feeling the weight of the world? Well, you're not alone. The U.S. Surgeon General says nearly 50% of parents are overwhelmed by stress. And guess what? It's affecting us all. Just last year, we heard about an epidemic of loneliness hitting half our population, especially young adults. But there's hope. I'm Scarlett Lewis, founder of the Choose Love movement. We're dedicated to your safety, health, and well-being with proactive mental health strategies. Imagine a life where stress and loneliness are replaced by joy and connection. We've already reached millions with essential life skills to prevent violence, substance abuse, and mental illness. Want to join this life-changing movement? It's easy. Visit chooselovemovement.org today. Become a member, spread the word, and access our free resources. Together, we can create a loving, supportive community. Remember, all the nurturing, healing love you give comes back to you tenfold. Thank you for choosing love.
I choose love. I choose love. Hey, hey. Hey, 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 oh.
The Choose Love movement offers no-cost solutions that keep our kids safe, providing them with the skills and tools they need to flourish. Join us in our mission to create the world we want to live in, one that's connected and compassionate. Check us out at chooselovemovement.org. Together, we can choose love.
Hey everyone, my name's Scarlett Lewis. I'm the founder of the Choose Love movement. Welcome to the Choose Love podcast. And I have another really, really special guest who is very near and dear to me today. His name is Jeffrey Schutz. He is the owner and executive director of the Neurovation Center in Sandy Hook, Connecticut. He is a senior neurofeedback clinician, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he's got a lot of letters after his name, so certifications. I'm going to read a little bit of an intro for him, and then we will get to meet him. He is the founder and executive director of the Neurovation Center. He's pioneered integrative techniques for assessing and integrating neuroanalysis and neurofeedback, we're talking brain here, into mental health care. Jeff is also the CEO of the Neuro Innovation Consulting Services and is currently pursuing a PhD in psychology, doing research on the integration of neurofeedback into mental health care. Jeff's goal is to bring about change, real, deep, and meaningful. See why I love him? He's fun and engaging, and he totally is. And he wants to get to the heart of relational problems. And then I like what you said, Jeff, unstuckify the nasty patterns of reactivity, resentment, and poor communication that seem to grow faster than weeds in any relationship. He is a specialist on counseling couples and families with special needs. Jeff himself had a special needs child who passed away, Joel. And he has fallen into a seldom identified area of expertise of counseling for those who have been wounded by a person with a personality disorder. I'm raising my hand. As an ordained and licensed pastor, Jeff enjoys challenging Christians to grow in their faith by applying biblical principles to everyday relationship dynamics. He's an accomplished speaker and comfortable in all settings, and self-proclaimed closet nerd. And I want to say right off the bat that I was recommended to Jeff and now have been a patient at the Neurovation Center for several months now, having received a QEEG, which you will know all about in a little bit, as well as neurofeedback training for, I think I've been through now 15 sessions, and I have received benefit. So I just wanted to share you with our community, Jeff, because first of all, you're a gem as a human being, and I really appreciate you. But also, I love what you do, and anything that can help people that are needing, that are suffering in any different way, I always want to bring to our community. And you're one of those people. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I am so excited. I was saying before, like when you invited me to do this, I thought this is so amazing, because I feel the same right back at you. I mean, like, I think you and I both looked at each other and said, we both been in Newtown, which is kind of stupid on my end. I totally understand why Scarlett would not know that I was there. I'm, kind of hidden away across from the high school. But, I mean, Scarlett, obviously, having been front and center in so much of what you do, I have no excuse.
Yeah.
But I feel like, the timing of meeting you, it's been just a pleasure finding out so much, and how much I feel like we share the same heart, and we're kind of going at it different ways, and that's what I love. It's been a really fun journey with you so far.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And you know what? The thing is, I'm 7 minutes away from the Neurovation Center. Like, I literally live 7 minutes away. And I did not know that you were there. And with all of my research and everything, I never really delved into neurofeedback, nor did I know what it was. I sought it out myself because about 6 or 7 years ago, I started having seizures, absent seizures. And so I didn't really want to go the medication route. So I've tried everything in and around that, which led me to you eventually. And so, and I've experienced benefit, but the fact that you can have such a tremendous resource in your backyard, 7 minutes away, and not even know about it. So, this is just kind of a wake-up call also for everybody listening. Get to know what your resources are in and around your area. And for that, it definitely takes some courage, because you have to go a little bit outside your comfort zone and, the normal course of your day. But if, it takes effort to find resources. And I know that it's not easy, especially for mental health. I'm hearing so much about people that are, they say get mental health help. And then you've got, it's hard. It's not easy, first of all, to find a therapist. It's actually taking new patients, and then one that you actually connect with and that can actually help you specifically. And so this is kind of you do provide counseling, but this is kind of an alternative way to treat mental health issues. And the fact that neurofeedback, and we're going to talk all about what it is and how to get it, but the fact that neurofeedback addresses so many of the mental health issues that we're experiencing in our society, like anxiety and depression, not that it's a mental illness, but ADHD and autism and seizures and, just all sorts of things, was really attractive to me. I think it's amazing, and I want everybody to know about it.
Yeah, it's amazing flexibility to it. I started the Neurovation Center largely because I wanted to have a platform to change the way we do mental health. And again, it's not that I'm against any of the existing techniques that we use. I'm a fan. I mean, I'm a therapist. There are a lot of great therapists out there. I'm not trying to be critical of, therapy in general. And I'm not an anti-med guy. I mean, those are the two primary ways that we address mental health issues right now. But what I've kind of come to feel like is we've found that we're over-reliant on techniques that are limited in their ability to conceptualize mental health problems and even provide, specified treatment to them. And I don't think that people in general would disagree with this. They just haven't known that there's alternatives. And the really exciting thing for me is that the both now and in the future, we've got emerging trends and emerging techniques that are going to and are now changing the way we think about mental health, completely changing options, transforming anticipation of outcomes, which is really what got me into it. I kind of said when I got into therapy, I realized that a lot of our ongoing training had to do with how do we teach people to cope? Like, okay. And then when you talk to some folks about medication, again, there's times when meds are absolutely necessary as neurotransmitters are in need of some help there. It's definitely helpful, but a lot of times it's just covering symptoms. And between coping and covering, and I started asking the question, why are we not curing it? Why
Yes.
is that not a part of the dialogue? And that gets me in trouble sometimes. I've actually been yelled at by psychologists that were angry that I said that I could actually cure or should try to cure something like ADHD. Well, why wouldn't we want to do that?
Yeah.
And so a lot of our thinking and a lot of my thinking at the Nervation Center has been, can we figure out ways to do things differently, to find a different way of conceptualizing symptoms, to find a different way of treating them, bringing the best of all of our modalities. And so that's where our approach is a bit different. We look differently at the symptoms. I don't really care much about diagnostic categories anymore. They don't always make sense, but
Wow.
we can make a lot more sense of them, particularly through the techniques we use with neuroanalysis and neurofeedback.
So that's really amazing, and people listening that are familiar with the Choose Love movement and me are going, they're nodding their head, they're going, oh, okay, because from the very beginning I wanted to address the root cause
Yep.
of why someone would do something like Adam Lanza at Sandy Hook Elementary School, and we spend so much time and effort in mental health addressing the symptoms.
Yeah.
And we're even, to me it seems like we are, like corporations are taking over these different mental health facilities, and they're turning them more into businesses and kind of like a churn and burn, like you get so much time with a patient, and this is happening for physical health too.
Right.
Having 10 minutes with a patient, you can barely look through the chart and address the symptom, the rash, say, but you're not asking, well, what's going on at home, what's really troubling you, why do you're not getting at the root cause, and so you're not curing it, you're just addressing the symptom. And when we do that, I feel like we're always a step behind, and we're learning from mistakes, and we never get ahead to actually a cure. And I love that you say that word cure, because obviously that's the 4-letter word similar to hope that we all want and need, and are all looking for. So can you talk about, like, what is neurofeedback and how does it work, and what are the benefits? Because it is a therapy.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll even frame it in the context of saying, right on the, if we're going to reform the system, I think that number one, what we want to do is we want to reconceptualize the diagnostic process, right? Diagnostically, we've kind of got problems and everybody knows it. And then on the other side
Diagnostic,
of
we
it,
have problems because it's like for mental illnesses, say, it's just symptom clusters, there's
yes,
no blood test, right? And so you go in and they go, oh, you have you're tired, you have brain fog, and no focus, you're depressed, here's a
yes,
pill, right?
yes. And that's exactly right. I mean, the example I typically use is ADHD. Everybody knows that ADHD is a collection of symptoms that, I mean, if you think about it, don't often have a whole lot of overlap. I mean, you got mood instability, hyperactivity, executive function, impulsivity, and attentional stuff. Anybody stop to think that those all take place in different parts of the brain? Like,
Mm.
so when you start pulling these things together and you go, okay, there is something there, right? I'm not a denier. I mean, absolutely, there are symptoms that are associated with all of those areas that can result in a diagnosis of ADHD. But how can we reconceptualize this so that those symptoms actually make sense?
Mhm.
And so, as an entry point, when I talk to folks about what I do with the neurofeedback and the neuroanalysis, it's a brain based approach where what we're looking at is the brain's ability to regulate its own electrical circuitry, right? That's what our brains do. Our brains regulate electricity. Electricity is a current. It's something that we can measure. It's something that I can access unbelievably quickly. It's incredibly simple. It's completely non-invasive. I mean, literally within 5 minutes, I can put a cap on a person's head, couple of gobs of goop in your hair, and I can get research grade signals that tell me exactly what's going on with the electricity. And people go, well, why is this relevant to mental health?
Mhm.
Well, everything you think, every sensation you have, every emotion you experience, all of your perception, everything about your attentional networking and what you choose to focus on, decisions you make, every bit of that is mediated by an electrical current. Ultimately, your whole world is organized and conceptualized in this little organ, you know, inside your skull, makes sense of everything, and it's all by electricity. Now, I'm not a minimalist. I don't reduce people down to just pure electricity. Humanity's greater than that. I mean, more valuable than that, more complex, but this is a big part of it. And so when you realize how much electrical current is relevant to perception and awareness, all this kind of stuff, well, it shouldn't come as a surprise that the vast majority of symptoms that we call mental health issues can be seen in your EEG. So I tell folks, I'm like, literally, if you give me a couple of minutes of your EEG, I could probably diagnose you without ever having spoken to you. I can look
Wow.
at your brain and I can figure out exactly what's going on. Well, one of the really interesting things on what we call neuroanalysis is we now know that ADHD, again, as a diagnosis, is really kind of crummy. There's at least 12 to 15 ways that a brain will dysregulate, all in different areas, all completely unrelated, any one of which you kind of pull a couple of them together and now you get the diagnosis, but they're different. There's a difference between distractibility type ADHD and zoning out ADHD. And oh, by the way, your brain can zone out 2 different ways. We've got at least 3 different ways that we can have significant problems with executive function. Your sensory processing systems can also generate other problems such as hyperactivity, and sensory issues themselves can generate all kinds of anxiety, which then gets into other diagnoses like, boy, when you look at generalized anxiety disorder, boy, that one's probably about as inaccurate as ADHD. Again, there's another 12 or 15 symptoms, all of which are completely different in the brain that can result in a diagnosis of GAD.
Wow.
You go, what does that mean? Well, reality is probably 40 to 50% of all diagnoses of generalized anxiety disorder are rooted in sensory processing issues. Your parietal system can be jacked up and the whole world becomes a caricature. And because your brain is exaggerating incoming signals, you just want to pull a hoodie up over your head and stay away from busy environments because it makes you feel anxious. So general anxiety disorder is very similar as a bad diagnosis or an inaccurate diagnosis like ADHD, because again, there's another dozen or more ways that the brain will dysregulate in the EEG that will result in the experience of anxiety in a diagnosis, but they're completely different. You can have a ruminative type anxiety, which is just frontal lobe action and you're thinking, can't stop thinking. You can have an irritability type anxiety where your brain doesn't know how to chillax. There's no zen, there's no chill. And that's just the set point for your brain. You can have sensory processing issues. Probably 40 to 50% of all diagnoses of generalized anxiety disorder is an unidentified sensory issue. I process too fast. I process too slow. Sensory information is exaggerated. I don't want to go out in public. I want to pull a hoodie over my head. So all of these are different things that we can see. And so one of my all-time favorite appointments is being able to present that to the client. When I bring it in and I show it to them, and I will regularly get folks that come in and they've been diagnosed generalized anxiety disorder, ADHD, depression, maybe a little bit of bipolar, slattering of borderline, and we're actually trying to figure out if I have an autism. And by the time you look at it, you go, none of those is accurate. None of those paints the picture, but you've got 6 or 7 features that if we combine these, make everything make sense. And then
That's
people walk out
incredible.
and they go, why has nobody ever told us this? And that makes so much sense. And so it's typically very validating. People walk out going, that's great. And
But it
so,
also makes sense. Like it sounds like the truth. It makes sense that
yes.
anxiety would be a sensory thing. And then if you think about that person and the medication that they would prescribe for each one of those things, those are heavy duty medications. And then working together, I don't know what the what other the things might happen, because you're on medication.
Mm-hmm. And this is not to say that everything is going to be reducible to an EEG feature. What it's saying is that in many cases, we're going to identify these features. And I'll talk more about neurofeedback, because neurofeedback is the technique we use to shift those.
Right.
Completely safe, non-invasive. It's like retraining your brain. I'll get back to that. But, not everything is going to be seen in an EEG, which is why counseling is still really crucial. So there's times when we go, okay, look, neurofeedback is likely to take care of a lot of these different features, improve on things in a lot of different ways. And, oh, by the way, we really still do need to do the care of the soul here, right? Care of the soul in terms of processing, right? When we treat PTSD, for example, PTSD is highly characterized by hyperarousal in the central nervous system. And a lot of people experience panic, triggers, cannot calm down, dissociative kinds of experiences. Why? Because their fight or flight mechanism in the EEG, in your brain, it's stuck in the on position.
Mm-hmm.
It can't shut off. Okay. Now, if you go to a therapist to try and talk it out, well, if you're stuck in the on position, you'll never get past the dissociation and the triggering. It's very difficult to get past that. There's techniques, but it takes time. With neurofeedback, I can actually shut that down pretty quickly. And then when you go and you talk to your therapist, now's the time you need to resolve the issue. Now it's the care of the soul, where I'm able to make sense of the problem of evil. I'm able to process the grief. I'm able to work through the significance, the impact, and how I'm going to allow this to now shape my identity. Right? What does this mean for me? So these two things, like with trauma, absolutely, the combination of neurofeedback with a therapeutic technique such as EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, probably the best treatment you'll ever find to do that. So you have that, and there's times, obviously, when medication is going to be the right and indicated approach. But now what we've got is we've got a lot of tools. We've now got a lot of ways of conceptualizing, and we can target where we believe the treatment is going to be most efficacious and have the impact. And you pull these together, it tends to have a really great impact. We can, like I said, start talking more about curing this.
I think that sounds amazing. So you go to counseling and you do neurofeedback, and you make sure that what you're treating is accurate. And you can do that by getting a QEEG, which is kind of a good overall view of the electrical impulses that are going on in different areas of the brain. And then, it's a confirmation, and it's
Right.
it's a better, it just is a better way to do things. Absolutely. And then we have the technology. I feel like everyone should be getting a QEEG. And especially if you're in therapy, you need to have this in addition to that.
I choose love.
Hey there, listeners. Are you feeling the weight of the world? Well, you're not alone. The U.S. Surgeon General says nearly 50% of parents are overwhelmed by stress. And guess what? It's affecting us all. Just last year, we heard about an epidemic of loneliness hitting half our population, especially young adults. But there's hope. I'm Scarlett Lewis, founder of the Choose Love movement. We're dedicated to your safety, health, and well-being with proactive mental health strategies. Imagine a life where stress and loneliness are replaced by joy and connection. We've already reached millions with essential life skills to prevent violence, substance abuse, and mental illness. Want to join this life-changing movement? It's easy. Visit ChooseLoveMovement.org today. Become a member, spread the word, and access our free resources. Together, we can create a loving, supportive community. Remember, all the nurturing, healing love you give comes back to you tenfold. Thank you for choosing love.
I choose love. I choose love.
Yeah, it just allows for a flexibility. I like to say it provides us with a diagnostic clarity on the symptoms that you will find nowhere else. And I regularly, when I tell you, people will leave that appointment and say, oh my gosh, that's the best presentation I've ever had. Like you said, it makes sense. I've had, and again, like for me, what's meaningful is life change. I want to see people regain the lives that they want, right? I want to see them have a level playing field where they can be the person God made them to be. One of the heartbreaking things that I'll see over and over, I will get that 10 or 12-year-old boy, you know, stereotyping, of course, but you know what I'm talking about. You'll get that young boy that's been coming through school and everybody thinks he's a troublemaker because he loses his mind, he gets angry, he outbursts, he's impulsive, you know, and nobody can predict it. And then he gets oppositional and then he digs his heels in and everybody thinks he's a jerk, but inside he's dying. He thinks he's a bad person because he can't control it. And I'll take a look at it and I'll go, oh my gosh, geez, you have these destabilization features that like, basically it makes you lose control over that emotion. It's not an excuse, but it's a reason.
Yeah.
And then there's a reason why you dig in your heels because your attentional network's getting locked up in your anterior cingulate. Sorry if it sounds technical, but I'm just kind of saying, but these are things that happen. And I go, so you're losing it because your brain's destabilizing your control over your emotions. And most people don't have that. 95% of the population doesn't have that deficit or that problem. And guess what? If we can shift this, you're not going to lose your mind anymore. And I've had a couple of different boys, like 10, 12 years old, just would break down and start crying.
I would think so.
You mean to tell me I'm not a bad kid? I'm like, no, it's, you know, it's really affirming. And the meds don't work on those things. You know, this kind of a presentation, very rarely will I ever see a medication do anything but make that worse. But
that's incredible. You know, the reason that I found this neurofeedback is because of my association with Nicholas Cruz in Parkland. And I know that he was given this type of QEEG and I know what they found in his brain. And there were inconsistencies because of fetal alcohol syndrome. And actually, you know, his scan was like a normal brain's like this and his was like this. And of course, that's after the fact. That's too late. He's already perpetrated this horrific crime. And I know that now it's kind of a regular practice to do this type of scan on a shooter's brain. And what if this had been done, I think about, you know, years before and all of this had been found and it had been treated. I have no doubt in my mind that tragedy would never have happened, along with a whole host of others that have happened since then.
Yeah. This is the stuff. And again, you know, we share the same heart on this, where you feel like, you know, I mean, I do a lot of remediative work. And yet at the same point, there are things that if you intervene now, it makes a huge difference later.
Right.
You know, one of the really heartbreaking stories for me was dealing with a 49-ish, 50-ish year old male that had been incarcerated in and out of the prison system. And I did an intake with this gentleman. And the background essentially was that grew up in a home with domestic violence. Finally, when he was 17 or 18, fought back, then gets arrested for it, put in jail. Now that he's in jail, every time he's getting harassed by somebody, he fights back on all kinds of medications. Completely, I say they have to snow him, right? Sedate him to the extent that, you know, he's not lashing out. And what I said to him was, I said, the reality is your only crime is you have a hyper-aroused central nervous system with what we would call a kindled amygdala. Your
Wow.
fight or flight mechanism is poised right on the verge of going off every second of every day because you were beaten by your father.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a criminal. You're not a violent man. You're not a cruel sadist. It's just that because your fight or flight is right there, once it gets triggered, you fight.
Mm.
And now once you're incarcerated, you ain't getting out. Now you're pigeonholed into that style. And the heartbreaking thing was, if I could have gotten to him when he was 17 years old, never would have been in jail.
Right.
I'll straight up, you know.
Right.
But the other side of this is the joy and the delight of being able to work with people to regain their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Because PTSD clients are again, I love working with them all. I'm sorry, you'll hear me say, I love working with this, I love working with that. I love it because people get their lives back. But with folks that have experienced trauma, so often, I mean, again, trauma shuts you down, trauma paralyzes you, trauma makes it so that the whole world becomes a terrifying experience for folks. And so they can't live their lives. They're shut down. And my wife laughs at me because, I keep in like, I'm always reading books, and and so I have always like my book notes, where what do you call them? Here we go, losing my train of thought. But keeping track of where I am in my book, I always use the thank you notes
Bookmark.
that I get from my bookmark is always a thank you note from somebody that whose
Oh, I
life was
love that.
changed. And that's what I
Yeah.
keep. I keep those things with me because it matters
Mm-hmm.
that people who have panic attacks and can't hold a job, can't have a relationship,
Right.
um, whether it's from sexual trauma or domestic violence, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And now seeing these people actually go back to school and get their degree in counseling, and now they're engaged to be married in a happy, good relate. That's what it's about, is helping these
Yeah.
people not just like head off into a life of crime or violence or whatever. And like what you
Right.
said, I'm like, so much want to be a part of the solution where we don't have Adam Lanzas. How do
Right.
we how do we break, the devastation that follows afterwards?
Right.
Um, but if we can stop even one of them, even if we can, do anything, it's worth it.
Oh, it's so worth it. And we have this technology, and we just need to use it in a greater way. And people need to be aware of it. I wasn't aware of it until maybe the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So I want everybody to know, and I want everybody to have access. I mean, this is something that is covered by insurance, and my insurance covers it. And
Mhm.
so it is accessible to everyone, whoever's listening. It's not out of your price range. It is possible to get this. And even if it's paid for by the state with at-risk youth, it is so worth it. I mean, you're actually saving this person from a lifetime of suffering, and then those around them, because we know hurt people hurt people. So it is worth taking advantage of these services. And I've been going through it. I've had 15 sessions, and it's actually very easy. You don't do anything. It was amazing. Like I go in, a cap's put on. The only inconvenience is that there's a little bit of conductive fluid that goes into these holes just on certain areas on my head. And I watch a movie. I'm watching Yellowstone. And so looking forward to every time I come back in. There's a screen that goes up over, like a filter over the actual movie. You get to watch whatever you want. And then I was fascinated because your brain likes bright. And so when your brain is not operating at optimum efficiency, the screen goes dim and you get a signal. And you'll hear a bong, bong, bong. And then when your brain goes back to where it's supposed to be, or rises up to where it's supposed to be, the screen goes bright. And that's it for one of the therapies. I was in your waiting room, and I think it was maybe my third session. And so it's all ages of stages that go, all ages and
No
stages.
limit.
So I'm in there with kids and grandmas, and I heard this kid, his mom was asking, how did your session go? And he said, my screen was dark the whole time. And I said, mine was too. So can you describe a little bit like
Oh,
what
yeah.
what is it, and how exactly it works and what people can expect, and then maybe give a few stories of how you have cured some
Yep.
things for people. Yeah.
Love it. So once I know what's dysregulating in the brain, that's exciting and interesting.
So
The
that's
really
after
good
the
news.
QEEG. That's
Yup.
after,
After I get the QEEG,
right, which
now
is
I know.
basically just sitting with a cap on your head, 10 minutes with eyes open, 10 minutes with eyes closed, and then
Yep.
you can actually take those readings and you can figure all this out.
Yeah, I can have that data if I set it up within just a few hours. Um, so once we have it, now I know what we want to fix, what we want to shift.
Mhm.
So we program the computer to have a conversation with your brain. This is where the concept of neurofeedback comes into play. It's a conversation with your brain, the neuro part, and the conversation is about telling you when it's doing good and when it's doing bad. And that's the feedback. So for you, your job is to sit there and, Scarlett, just like you said, you sit there and you watch a TV show with a dumb looking cap on your head and a couple of gobs of goop.
Yeah.
That's your job. 45-minute deal. You do it 2 or 3 times a week. Again, that's part of where it becomes a little bit of a challenge for folks because it's a time commitment. But keep in mind, it's a limited time commitment. When you do it, once you're done, you're done. You don't have to keep doing it interminably. Most people are done somewhere between 3 and 6 months of this. Okay, but when you're done, the symptoms should resolve. You don't have to keep doing it.
The
But
other
you're
thing
sitting in
is
the
you
room.
don't have to like talk. You're not in there talking about what happened to you. You're not talking about your pain. You're not trying to figure things out. You're sitting there watching a show.
Yep. And that's what you do. But on our end, that's where a lot of the magic happens. We're engaging very fundamental, intrinsic principles of how your brain will function in order to help the brain change itself. Okay, so keep in mind, completely non-invasive. I'm not shocking anybody. I like to say the only thing that's shocking or painful in my office is my sense of humor. Other than that, nothing hurts. Okay, so it's completely safe. There's no side effects on this. We almost never get no results. You almost always get something. And in most cases, it's transformative. But what happens is exactly like you said, you're watching TV, my computer is monitoring your brain. We've told it what to look for. So let's say, for instance, that you have a lot of problem with ruminating, thinking all the time. Can't stop, can't fall asleep at night because you're thinking.
And that's
Okay,
true.
that
That's
is
true.
always there. It means that your brain is kind of stuck in the frontal regions with a high amplitude, high frequency band called beta. And so it's super high. And my computer's monitoring it, watching. Every time that gets a little worse, my computer takes the light away from the screen. That's feedback. Every time it goes down, light goes back on. Worse, off, down, on. And your computer or your brain goes, wait a minute. If I reduce my beta, I get to watch TV and I like light. Yay. And again, your brain is kind of like a 9-month-old golden retriever. It just wants to please you. Like, ooh, it's so excited. It's so happy. It wants that light. It's normal for your brain to want light. You're a visual creature. So your brain will shift its own electrical current to keep the light on. And in the same way that, if anybody's ever watched Karate Kid and likes the concept of Miyagi-Do or Cobra Kai or something like that, when you're in my office, think of it as wax on, wax off. Your brain is practicing over and over the moves it needs to protect itself, keep itself safe. And that's why when people say to me, how the heck can watching TV get rid of my anxiety? I don't know. How does waxing and unwaxing a car protect you from bullies? It's kind of the same principle. That's a kind of a simplification, but we're training your brain to know how to function differently. I mean, a lot of it, the key is disrupting and repatterning. And that's why it's like literally insane when people say it sounds too good to be true. I'm like, well, it is too good and it is true. The rumination just plain goes away. like a month later and you go, you know what? I used to ruminate so much I couldn't fall asleep at night. I was distracted. I was anxious. I'm freaking out all the time. I'm falling asleep. What happened? Well, okay, I just shut it off.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to talk about it. We just shut it off.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of one little way in which we can give an example, but we can do this on honing attentional networks. We can do this to help the brain not destabilize mood or impulse control. I can do this with all of the sensory processing stuff. We can do this with hypervigilance. Like I said, the fundamental issue with PTSD is that your brain is stuck in the fight or flight, right on the edge zone.
Mm-hmm.
And it co-ops so much of your energy. It co-ops the reactivity. And so that's the stuff. Once we shut it down, it's not like you can't go into fight or flight again. It just means that we've shut off the sensitivity. And so now you're able to reintegrate, you're able to calm, and now you can really get back to living. It's really quite extraordinary. So, these are all things. Sorry, I know I'm waxing eloquent. I don't know if there's other things that you would want me to kind of comment on, just in terms of, what it takes to get into treatment, or I don't know, process.
So, and I just want to say, like, I do a lot of screen time with my work, but also outside of my work. And so I was unable to read a book, and I love reading books. And so actually during my 15 sessions, I picked up a book. I happened to be Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights in an airport, and I sat on 2 flights and read it cover to cover. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would not have been able to do this. I would not have been able to, like, I would read and my mind would wander, and I'd have to read the paragraph again. My mind would wander and I'd have to read the paragraph again. So frustrating. I actually read it cover to cover. So, and sleeping better, because I had, sleep issues, and being able to focus, like actually being able to sit down and accomplish something, that was really big for me as well, and be more present. So I've definitely experienced benefits. You want to just, we don't have a lot of time left, but go through, definitely. And also go through how people can contact you, because I know people will want to. And, maybe if we could end with a success story, that would be awesome, but kind of a little bit walk through the process, and then we'll have to wrap it up.
I will. Okay, great. So if you want to get in touch with us, go to our website. It's theneurovationcenter.com. If you look up neurofeedback near me, the Neurovation Center, our logo's a phoenix rising from the ashes, right? Recovering your life. And just so that you know as well, anybody that contacts my office, we run an initial consult. I'll give you an hour of my time for free. I don't charge for that. I feel like nobody knows what I do, and you have a right to know exactly what it is that we do. I have an obligation to tell you. So I wouldn't charge anybody prior to you knowing that you wanted this treatment. So if you want to know more, you want to find out how it might help you, just, contact our office. Go to the website and we'll set you right up. I'd be happy to sit and chat with you. The process is pretty straightforward. If you want to get going, we have 3 appointments for intake. I like to say, I really feel like our intake process is one of our best products. It's highly individualized. This is where you get your EEG. We get to know you really well to find out what's relevant about you. And then we do that review that tells you the results. And that's just a great appointment. Once we go through there and we've come up with a treatment plan, we feel reasonably certain that we'll get good results. We know how to program and get you going. Neurofeedback is a commitment of time, kind of like working out. You do it 2 to 3 times a week. The cool thing is you just sit there and watch TV. Most busy moms love their neurofeedback 45 minutes. There's nobody bugging you. It's just you and binge watching, whatever. In general, most folks, the range for completion of treatment is 35 to 60 sessions. And within that time frame, I'll get the majority of the gains we're ever going to get from doing neurofeedback. And it's going to lock in. It will not go backwards. It's very resilient over time. So we eradicate the symptoms. And, in most cases, and again, I'm not saying it's everyone, I have to be careful of that. Because every person's different. We have to consider each person and understand how much neurofeedback is going to do. But that's pretty much it. We'll check in with you over time. We repeat the EEGs. We track everything, just to monitor. So that's the basic gist of it. How to get in touch. And then you just had said, what's a good story?
And then before you say that, you have a center, it's in Sandy Hook, it's worth traveling to, but there are also other centers like yours. And then the other thing is your son is also a part of your business. He's in Virginia and he's doing something that's a little bit different. That is kind of being able to have a unit in your house.
Yes. So this has been very fun. The last year, we've been beta testing and developing all the infrastructure to enable people to run neurofeedback professional grade from the comfort and convenience of your own home. How's that for a tagline?
That's incredible.
But my son, actually, he's, married and he lives down in Virginia. He's been teching for almost as long as I have. He was 10 years old helping me get a cap on and learn how to do it. So Josh is really good at it. But so we've worked on this. If you're too far away, not regionally local, that becomes an option. There's no insurance coverage for that because it's self-administered. Like I'm not the therapist that's actually doing it. So it ends up being more expensive, but for some folks, it makes more sense. It's not cost prohibitive in a lot of cases, but yes, that's an option. I've also got an employee that's down in North Carolina talking with different folks that are actually likely to open up some of our remote training centers, even in different parts of Connecticut. So interestingly enough, that looks like it's going to explode this year. A lot of interest in that.
Absolutely. It doesn't surprise me at all. This is amazing.
So great story. I have permission to share this. Some of you, especially those of you that are, in the community, Karen Wilk is one of those individuals that was there on 12/14. She was one of the teaching assistants.
So that's the day of the Sandy Hook tragedy.
Yep, the day of the Sandy Hook tragedy, and suffered severe PTSD. I mean, she was in the heart of it. You would see her in, the documentaries and the pictures from that day.
Was she a teacher?
She was an assistant teacher.
Okay.
And was holed up in a bathroom listening while all of this happened. With one of the children, and had to walk the kids out through the carnage. She did a lot of different trauma techniques, tried to do it again, just for 3 years, did not get any progress, just always, triggered. She'd hear any kind of a loud noise and she'd literally just freak out. And, and she gives me permission to tell this story. So this is not anything that she would not, be approving of. And then she found us and we did neurofeedback. We were able to combine it with EMDR. Within a year, she was no longer diagnosable with PTSD, complete remediation of symptoms. Obviously, she still has the scars. You don't get rid of scars. The pain of what you go through will be there. The loss is always there. But the hypervigilance, the hyperarousal, the triggering, completely gone. She was so blown away and so impacted by the experience of going through our treatment that she quit her job with Sandy Hook Elementary School. And again, that wasn't a great thing. And I mean, we love Sandy Hook Elementary School. And she came to me and she said, I want to work for you. This is what I want to do as my career. And Karen is now my senior tech. She's one of the, she's going to get me crying because she's one of my favorite people in the whole wide world.
Wow.
Karen is absolutely a joy and a delight for me and for my business because she loves our clients and she is so devoted to what we do. And she has made our center so much better. But again, that's like when you say what's a great story, that's one of my all-time favorites.
That's
because
incredible.
we really countered the evil that was done that day.
Absolutely.
And not only that, but I got blessed by it. And that's what gives me joy. I love it. Just seeing story after story like that. So that's my
That's
story.
incredible. And that's an extreme example of what neurofeedback can do. But, you know, we've been talking about general anxiety and depression, and we know that
Yep.
there's so many, like, mental health issues are extreme now in our country, especially after COVID. And this is such an incredible resource. And I am so grateful to you, Jeff, for coming on and sharing it with the Choose Love community.
Oh, yeah.
I really appreciate you. So thank you very much. I encourage everyone to learn more. Go to the Neurovation website. We will include that in the description of the podcast. There's a lot of great resources there. And as Jeff said, reach out to him, ask questions. I want this incorporated everywhere for everyone. We need to do this. Our kids deserve to have this. We deserve to be able to live our lives in the best way, and we have this technology. So thank you so much for explaining it, Jeff. And I look forward to doing more with you and the Neurovation Center to get the word out.
My pleasure. Absolutely. We're behind you 100%. So Neurovation Center is going to be doing what we can to, you know, push you and encourage you and support you as well. So it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Actually, you had offered that the last time we spoke to even be a corporate sponsor of Choose Love, and
That's
I
right.
wanted to give you a shout out for doing that as well. That's incredible, and it's available for other people to do that as well. But you know, when I believe in something, and I'm just so proud to be able to say that we're partnering together to elevate not only Choose Love, but also the Neurovation Center. It's really important. It's really important that we start looking at suffering in a different way, not symptoms oriented, but as a cure, to be able to cure it. I always say, it's interesting, you were talking about coping. And whenever I speak, I say, I don't want to cope with my symptoms. That's kind of like, hey, you're going to be around for a long time. So you take the right side of the bed, and let's not have our toothbrushes touch, because, you know, and I don't want that. I want to take what I can from the experience, the learning, the growth, the strengthening, and then I want to leave that pain behind. And that's what the Neurovation Center helps us to do. It's what Choose Love and what we teach helps us to do too. That
Right on.
traumatic growth, right? We actually can create a generation that has the courage to face difficulty in their life and to realize that pain has a purpose. It's there to help us grow, and you take what you can out of that experience, and then you leave the rest. And we both do that in what we do. And so partnering helps make both of that stronger. So thanks so much, Jeff. I'm so appreciative of you and so excited about the future that we have together.
Same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, hey, oh. It's all part of us. We can all choose love. It'll lift you up if you let